VORs. Yes, I'm listening to the audio again, and it sounds okay here, so I'm going to take this stuff out of my ears here before I go completely nuts, because there's, as I say, like a half-second delay in that, and that'll really kind of mess with your head. And Lord knows I don't need that, right? Aloha. How's everybody? Huh? Doing good? All right. We're going to pop into VOR approaches here. The stuff that you read here in Chapter 25, I'm sure a lot of this was not anything that you hadn't seen before, because I think we did a pretty good job of covering a lot of these when we did our instrument approach plate review. So most of this, again, is going to be review for you. There may be a couple things that are a little bit different for you, and we'll check that out as we go through. So for now, let's go through. Oh, I just hate saying goodbye to this image. I need to have one where the palm fronds are actually like you know, blowing around in the wind, and where there's like seagull chatter and things like that. Maybe a parrot in the tree. That's what I need. And then some form of island beverage. So anyway, there we go. Let's go to this here, shall we? Oh my God, I love that. All right, here we go, and back to reality. VOR instrument approaches. What we're going to look at here is what they review in the book. This is a Casa Grande approach here in Arizona, and it's going to be one of the ones that they illustrate in the book. You'll notice that in your figures and legends in big red, you have a lot of these here that you're going to be reviewing as you go through your test prep components of this. Make sure that you are familiar with all of the approach plate information that you have in your Big Red study guide, because those things that you're going to see coming up here in the not too distant future on quizzes here for you. So you'll look at this here, and you guys have read this. I don't need to read this for you. So what we'll do is we'll just review what the book shows here as this approach plate piece. Remember, the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to look at the date and to make sure that the approach plate that we have is going to be current. You can see here from this, if anybody here would use an approach plate from 2004, woe unto you. So that's sort of a big thing there. I want to open this because I saw this here also. Let's go with the 2x zoom, and then I will move this over here slightly. Well, that's a little too, not right there, not quite where I wanted it. Goodness, come on. I want to put it in the center, because then I will do this. Do our Mr. Etch-a-Sketch, and we'll talk about a couple of things here with this approach. So with this, we know that we would not use this for navigation, simply because of the fact that it's so expired, and the things look a lot different now. But we can see that it's for the VOR approach, runway 5, Casa Grande, and we look here now. So we know it's a VOR approach, so what is it that we're going to be using here to kind of dial these things in? Oh, a VOR. Excellent. So what's going to be the frequency for that VOR? Well, there we have it right up there in that first strip up top, which gives us the frequency here. Then the next thing, what radial are we going to be using off that VOR? There's the radial that we're going to be using, and that makes sense that we would use a 048 degree radial if we're going to be landing on runway 5 in any form of a quasi straight in fashion. Runway information that we have here, you can see here, excuse me, well, there it goes, that we've got about 5,200 feet of runway to work with there. Touchdown zone elevation, airport elevation, we have all of that. Next thing that we have here, we're going to look at our takeoff here and our arrival minimums, anything like that. What kind of lights do we expect to see as we break out of the clouds down here? And then we know that we have our missed approach instructions. Our missed approach instructions are also lined out here on the plan view that we have with more information here with regard to altitudes. So you can see here climbing 2,200 feet. Then you're going to make a climbing right turn to 3,500 feet direct to the VORTAC and hold. And so that's kind of what would happen here, and that's why you're going to see this hold here. The hold here also is a holding pattern, but this holding pattern can also be one of those things that you can use. For instance, if you're coming in here from the north, you can use this holding pattern here in lieu of like a procedure turn. You don't see a procedure turn here for this, but this you would enter in here, come over that VOR, you would enter that hold on a direct entry pattern here to come back, get yourself lined up at the right altitude, get your VOR all tuned in here to the 048 degree radial to begin your approach. You can then look here. This, I don't know why I'm having such a hard time erasing this stuff here. There we go. We can look here on the next line. We see our AWOS here to get our weather. Albuquerque Center. Where's the tower? Where's approach? Where's all that stuff? Well, this is a little bitty airport. So this is not going to be an airport that's going to be serviced by a tower or have any kind of approach beyond the ATC Albuquerque Center here, and that's what's going to happen. And then you're going to be self-announcing here on the Unicom frequency, or the Common Traffic Advisory frequency of 122.7 as you get closer in to make this approach. Okay, so that's why this is a smaller approach. Plan view, we're looking here now. We can see our MSA. You'll see that this is a little bit different than a lot of the lowland areas, a lot of the flatter areas. You're not going to see a lot of terrain necessarily there, but you could see obstacles that are going to be noted in your MSAs, your minimum safe altitudes here, with quadrants coming off there, identified here by certain radials. And some of those things out in like Iowa are going to be wind farms, so you'll start to see those things popping up out there, and that would definitely ruin your day. We can see here now what the actual name of the VOR is here. It's a Stanfield VOR 114.8, and it also gives us the Morse code that we can use on a volume basis here if we want to dial that frequency in and listen to the dit dit dash dat dat dit dit dat dit dit dat dat, whatever those things are, and you can listen to those. Or in the G1000, you'll know that it's good to go when it's green. Green is good to go, right? So there we have that. You can see some other areas out here where there are some obstacles that you see out here. One of them here as you're kind of going away from that airport there at 3,400 feet. And so those are things that you're going to need to kind of pay attention to. I'm going to change the view here now. We'll scroll down and we will look at this. I don't know why it takes so doggone long to get through this, guys. If you could see my hands and see how fast I'm trying to scroll through this, it would amaze you. So I'm going to get down here where we can see the bottom portion of this. Oh, goodness. Oh, boy. Come on. There we go. Come on. I don't know why. I just don't know why. So there's that. Here's this. We'll look at the bottom part. Now we look at the profile view here. We can see 3,500 feet. That's where we want to be. We show the outbound and the inbound course here at the VORTAC. We know what our course is going to be, 048. And that's what we're going to be using to get down to the airport. We can see our visual descent point. We can see our missed approach information here. We can see for the fact at our minimums here also, categories A and B, is that we're down here at 1,960 feet. We have a half statute mile visibility here on kind of a straight in to runway 5. The circling, it's the same descent altitude. However, we do need to have a little greater visibility there for the circling approach, and they're calling for 1 mile. Okay. Then it also shows up here our missed instructions. We see that the airport information here, and then the other piece here that we see is this. This is going to be the final approach fix to the missed approach point, and that's going to be a distance of 7.8 miles. And if you look at that here and you do the math right there, I think you'll see that that's 7.8 miles from this to this, where you got to go missed, 7.8 miles. And with this again, with a ground speed of 90 knots, it should take you 5 minutes and 12 seconds to get from here to here at that ground speed. So from a timing standpoint on a non-precision approach like this with VOR, this is very important. You can do it DME here with this 7.8, but you can also do it with timing if you're able to stay on your ground speed of 90. That takes a little doing, but that can happen. So there's that. Now then, let's go back here, change this, fit width, and come here. That goes through there and talks you through that, and that's kind of the VOR approach. As we kind of looked at when we were looking at the VOR coming into Kahului, it's relatively simple. It is, you still have responsibilities with that as well, but just understand that it's not going to get you down to the minimums the way that an instrument approach will. So again, it's kind of 6 of one, half dozen of the other in my view about what might be preferable. Something simpler like this if you know where your ceilings are, or if you really need to get down there and you really need to land, the chances of that happening with an ILS are probably greater than it would be with this, especially in very reduced visibility issues that you're having. Radar approaches. So we got a couple different flavors of radar approaches. One is going to be a surveillance radar approach. Another one is going to be a precision approach radar with this. So you have an ASR or SAR, depending upon which book you're looking at, and a PAR. So the difference is it has to do with the precision of the radar unit that has been installed for ATC to work with. It also has to do with special training that someone there at that facility has had to use that very precise radar approach. So there aren't very many of them. The PARs, there are only a handful around the country that are there that you'll find approaches for some form of civil aviation. So most of the radar type approaches are going to be the ASR or the surveillance type radar. A surveillance type radar approach is going to be a non-precision approach. A PAR, however, is, as the name implies, a precision approach. So it's going to be ILS-like in how that works, and we'll review that here, and you can see what I'm talking about here. So the surveillance approach, of course, what's going to happen is that you are going to get the controller living in your ear, walking you through this approach. They are going to get you set up with headings. They're going to get you set up to begin your descent. Once you begin that descent, now they expect you in most of these cases, unless they tell you something different, to hold that 3-degree glide slope. And with that, again, like with everything else, your ground speed is going to be very important on this particular venture, because that's going to help you define what your descent rate in feet per minute is going to be. So then you're going to get a series of vectors here for your horizontal piece. You're going to have your vertical component is going to be verbal here for you, and then they're also going to let you know when you arrived at the mist. So now if you look at this and you're looking at your book, you can see the 1 in 20 rule, which this is something that we have looked at before when we looked at the front section of your approach plates, and you saw the table that allowed you to convert feet per nautical mile to feet per minute. The same thing applies here. And if you look at 3 degrees, and if you look at this as saying that your ground speed was 60, for instance, if your ground speed is 60 and you're descending at 300 feet per minute, that's going to put you on a 3-degree glide slope. If you're traveling at 120 knots, then that's going to put you at a 600 foot per minute rate of descent to keep you on 3 degrees. 90 is going to be halfway there, and that'll be 450 feet per minute. In the diamond, we're primarily looking at that ground speed of 90, and that magic number there for that 3-degree glide slope is going to be 450 feet per minute. That's what you're going to see on your VSI. This shows you what you're looking at here with regard to this surveillance type approach. You can see here what you're looking at And again, you can see runway 26 here. It's irrelevant to this ASR precision approach because you're going to be talked into it, but it does kind of give you an idea about, you know, the type of course that you're going to be flying as you come into this. The information that you see up here, some of it is going to be the same, some of it's going to be different. With regard to some of the other frequencies that you tune into, well, you know, it's you know, you're not necessarily going to have to do that because it's just you don't have those ground-based radio navigation units or GPS that you're using for this approach. You can see here that when you're looking at your radar, it says 119.5. Well, that's a communication frequency. So that's what that's who you're going to be talking to here. This is your weather. Here again, more weather. So it's the information that you see here is going to be set up for this type of an approach versus some form of ground-based or celestial navigation approach. It goes through the missed approach instructions here as well. You can see here what your minima are going to be. So if you're looking here for a straight-in landing here and you're able to use the PAR, a precision approach, you can see that you're going to get down to 4919 here MSL versus an ASR or a surveillance approach, and it's going to be fully about 500 feet higher than that. In these various classes, you have your visibility here. Then from a circle to land, we can see also that we have some circle to land information here also that is going to be very similar to the non-precision ASR type or the surveillance approach, but we can also see that they do not want you circling south of the runway. The runway orientation here is going to be east and west, as you can see, and they don't want you circling out here to the south. It appears that there is some terrain out here, but there may also be another reason why they want your bailout point to be up here to the north. So keep that in mind here with this approach. You can come through here and you can look down your hypotenuse and see where you are here with this, holding that 3-degree glide slope. It'll ultimately, I think it'll show you the formula. Yes, it will. It'll show you the formula here to talk about what we talked about here before. You guys can look at this. I'm sure you've read this. The math is not that difficult here. Maintaining a 3-degree descent. This is going to be that thing that when you look, as I mentioned before, this is kind of how that, you know, how all of that works in just kind of the quick math piece. And you can see that probably the most common ground speed is going to be 90, especially with our aircraft. And that ground speed of 90, again, when you think about that, is a feet per minute descent of 450 that equals that 300 feet per nautical mile in that slope of 3 degrees. Okay, this goes through some of the math here for you here also. You can see this. Also thinking about your headwinds and your tailwinds, when you do the math, you kind of add that to the thing. So for instance, if you look at this, if you look at a 15-knot headwind, you may have a true airspeed of excuse me, of 75 knots, but your ground speed may only be 60, and in that case you're looking at 300 feet per minute. If you're looking at some kind of a tailwind here, like even 15 knots, that gets you here, your true airspeed may be 75, ground speed of 90, and that's going to give you that 450 that we talked about there as well. And this gives you the formula here. Flying this here again, you can see that you have an MDA because this is a non-precision approach. Your missed approach point, this is going to be that thing there where you begin your missed approach should you need to, and it's just kind of that part is somewhat standard when you look at that. This walks you through how the controller is going to be giving you that information here, your course guidance in vectors, and that's going to be some form of a magnetic heading that you're going to be flying there to kind of hold your course. Also remember that any time that you are being vectored around, they expect you to fly standard rate turns unless you are on the final approach course, and in that final approach course your turns are expected to be at half standard rate. So small maneuvers, you don't want to do anything heroic on the final approach. The PAR, the precision element of this, it's going to be the same. The difference is going to be is that it's going to take you down to a DH or a DA, meaning that it's a precision approach, meaning that it's going to be lower. And again, it's going to be a more precise maneuver here for you. You may be getting, depending upon winds, you may be getting more information in your ear from ATC to kind of help guide you down the pipe there for you. They will again call your top of descent, so they'll instruct you to begin your descent. You'll know about where that's going to be based on what that chart said, and so again, it's going to be important for you to have your airplane configured properly before you begin that descent, to be ready to land and to hold that 3-degree glide slope there for that. Like I say, you're going to get a lot of communications. That guy's going to be, or girl is going to be living in your ear with that as you come down there. It's you know, I've never done a precision approach like this. I've done a surveillance approach. I've done a few of those in practice, and they're kind of fun to do. I've never done a precision approach because I've never lived anywhere where there has been a precision approach available to practice with any of this, but it would just be a little bit more accurate with this. Again, it's a higher precision radar, and you get some special training to run those. So that's kind of how the differences between a surveillance and a precision approach go. Now, a no gyro approach. This is the thing that we think about here when we start thinking about a partial panel approach. Let's say for whatever reason your gyroscopic instruments or a gyroscopic instrument perhaps has failed. So now what you're doing here, it's going to be the kind of a thing that is very much like a surveillance or a precision approach, in the fact that you are going to be given vectors and you're going to be given commands. I'm going to sneeze. Oh, excuse me, guys. I was trying to reach the mute button and I couldn't get to it. So you're going to be given commands to follow particular vectors, altitudes, etc. So they are going to verbally walk you through this approach. Again, these are kind of cool, but what you're looking at here is that you're looking at the kind of thing where you're looking at your compass now, because again, if you've had a gyroscopic failure, you may not have, well, you may not have what? You may not have your attitude indicator, you may not have your heading indicator, you may not have your turn coordinator. So what you're looking at there is that you're looking at your compass, and you're looking at that compass in determining, are you in a turn? Are you, you're looking at your airspeed indicator to determine, are you climbing, are you descending? You're going to have your vertical speed, you're going to have your altimeter. So those are the instruments that you're going to have. It's going to be the kind of a thing that like I say, these are a lot of fun. They're great to practice with. Your turns, again, are expected to be standard rate turns. You do not want to exceed much more than 500 feet per minute on a climb or descent. Keep everything in a very small box whenever you're making these maneuvers, because anything heroic like this could lead to some form of spatial orientation, and in a partial panel scenario, that may be difficult to recover from. Once you start that, you don't speak. The ATC, the person who is conducting your approach, they are the only ones that will speak. And so they will tell you, turn right heading 180, descend, maintain 5,000. And you don't respond, you just do it. And when you do, standard rate turns apply. If you don't have an attitude indicator, how do you know that you're doing standard rate turns? Well, one of the things that you practice whenever you're going through your instrument training is what we call timed turns. And you'll use your compass. And all of that lead and lag stuff that we talked about before, the compass errors, those things will apply as you're making these maneuvers. And that's why it's important. It's why that timer is important in that aircraft, and why an instrument certified aircraft has to have a working sweep second hand or a digital display for you to use just for these types of things. So it's really kind of cool when you do it. and they will call your vectors, they'll call your turns, they'll call your altitudes, and you just do it as expeditiously as you can, again, without making some form of heroic control input to try to maneuver your airplane. Everything is nice and easy, nice and steady, nice and smooth, nothing outrageous. Keep it small. So that's what you're doing here on these no gyro approaches. So yeah, and again, they're fun. It's great to practice these. It's also a lot of places with approach controllers, they actually enjoy practicing these as well because they don't get to do them all that often. But again, they need to keep their chops up in just the exact same way that you do. So it's why these things are kind of fun to do. So there you go. That is, there's VORs. Wow. Okay. Like I say, these chapters are not very long. But just remember, I want you to go through here and do these questions here at the end and make sure that you understand these. Also to make sure that you're understanding what is going on here in big red with all of these. The next thing we're going to be talking about are GPS approaches. This is going to be a little bit more involved here with this, so make sure you've done the reading prior to watching the video for GPS approaches. And we will, that's where we're going to pick up this next time. So with that, I just want to say aloha. No, I know, I love this. So guys, have a good one. We'll see you next time here on the GPS approaches. See you.